Okay, think about this. A brand new international university campus, a really important vote at the UN, tens of thousands of crores poured into new infrastructure, and a major defense upgrade. Now, that sounds like a country's highlight reel for an entire year, right? Well, in India, this was all just 1 week in September 2025. So let's dive into this incredible snapshot of a nation that is seriously on the move.
It really makes you wonder, what does a busy week for a rising global power actually look like on the ground? At first glance, it might seem like a whole bunch of disconnected events, but when you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, you start to see a very clear strategy taking shape. And that's what we're going to do today. Connect the dots across three key areas.
First up, we're going to look at India's growing influence on the world stage. Then we'll turn our focus inward to the massive, and I mean massive, nation-building blitz that's transforming the country from the inside out. And finally, we'll look at the bedrock that makes it all possible, the strategic economic and defense foundations that are holding everything together. All right, let's kick things off with that expanding global footprint. You know, this is where a country shows its strength, not just with military hardware, but with its culture, its education, and its diplomacy. And we got a perfect example of this on September 11th. The super prestigious Indian Institute of Management Ahmedabad, one of the IMs, opened its first ever international campus. And the location here is so important. Dubai. Look, this isn't just about offering a few business courses abroad. This is a strategic play. It's about planting an institutional flag, deepening that India-UAE partnership, and really flexing some educational soft power. Then, literally the very next day, the scene shifts completely. We're in the high-stakes world of global diplomacy at the United Nations. The General Assembly was voting on something called the New York Declaration. This was a huge deal, a resolution put forward by France and Saudi Arabia that officially backed a two-state solution for the Palestine-Israel conflict. And this is where it gets really interesting. How did the votes fall? Well, an overwhelming majority, 142 nations, including India, voted for it. But the United States was one of only 10 nations to vote against it. This moment perfectly highlights India's independent foreign policy. It's making decisions based on its own long-held principles, even when that path diverges from one of its major global partners. Okay, let's pivot. While all these moves are being made on the global stage, an equally ambitious, if not more ambitious, transformation was happening back home. And we're talking about a nation-building blitz on a scale that is just staggering. Just try to wrap your head around this number. 71,000 crore rupees. That's over $8.5 billion US dollars. That is the total value of development projects that Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched during a whirlwind tour that lasted just 3 days, from September 13th to the 15th. That number alone tells you everything you need to know about the sheer intensity of this domestic push. And this tour cut right across India's northeast and east, covering 5 states: Mizoram, Manipur, Assam, West Bengal, and Bihar. It all kicked off in Mizoram, where projects worth almost 9,000 crore rupees were launched. Right away, that signals a huge focus on developing regions that historically just haven't been as connected to the rest of the country. Let's zoom in on one of the biggest projects in Mizoram, the Bairabi-Sailang railway line. This thing, costing around 8,000 crore rupee, is an absolute game changer. For the first time ever, this 51-kilometer line connects Mizoram's capital, Aizawl, to the national rail network. I mean, that is a massive leap forward for trade, for connectivity, and for strategic access in that whole region. But the ambition didn't stop in the northeast. Further south, an even bigger project is taking shape, one the Prime Minister himself called a project of strategic, defense, and national importance. We're talking about the Great Nicobar Project. Now, this is not just another infrastructure project. No way. This is a grand strategic vision. With a mind-boggling budget of 72,000 crore rupees, the plan is to totally transform India's southernmost island into a major strategic hub. It's a move to strengthen India's power in the incredibly important Indian Ocean, and it's a key piece of that long-term vision for a developed India by 2047. So you're probably asking, how on earth do you fund this kind of massive infrastructure push? Well, innovation is key. The National Highways Authority of India, the NHIA, had a huge milestone. They issued over 10,000 crore rupees in something called insurance surety bonds. Basically, think of it as a financial safety net. It guarantees that if a contractor gets into trouble, the money is still there to finish the project.
It's a really smart way to de-risk these huge undertakings and just keep the momentum going. Okay, so we've got global outreach and a domestic building blitz, but what's holding it all up? For our final section, let's do a quick health check on the country's core economic and security fundamentals.
So, on the economic side, let's look at retail inflation for August. It did go up a little bit to 2.7%. But here's the key. That is still way below the Reserve Bank of India's target of 4%. What this tells us is that the economic environment is stable. And that's absolutely crucial if you want to support these huge national projects without causing a bunch of financial stress for everyday people.
And on the security front, the Indian Navy got a serious upgrade. They commissioned the new Lanzanine radar. This is a powerful 3D air surveillance system that can track threats from almost 500 kilometers away and at altitudes of up to 100,000 feet. But the most important part? It was indigenously integrated. That means it was built into the system right here in India, which is a huge step forward in the mission for defense self-reliance. So let's just quickly recap that whirlwind week. We saw India expand its global footprint through education and diplomacy. We saw it execute a massive nation-building blitz right here at home. And behind the scenes, it quietly strengthened the economic and security foundations that make all of that possible. Every single event was another piece of a much larger puzzle.
From a university in Dubai to a new railway in Mizoram, from a vote in New York to a new radar on the high seas, it was just 1 week. But it leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. When a nation starts moving on all fronts at the exact same time, what does that signal for the decade ahead?